Cool.
All right. Well, both of you know this, but my name's Connor. So we're coming together to work together today a little bit on the Holochain Clutter app, and we want to see where we can get with implementing a @mentions feature. So I think there's going to be a couple layers to that. Some of it's on the front end. How do you actually probably we won't try to implement the the drop down @mentioning, because that's kind of like a fancy front end UI kind of thing. We'll just make it so that you can stick an @mention raw into your code or into your meow, and then the deeper part would be on the back end of looking at the Holochain side and how do we record @mentions into the Holochain so that we can bring them back up and re-expose them to the user interface so that someone can basically see a sort of a notifications view that would give them a list of when a user had been mentioned. So in terms of the last time that we got together, we implemented the single meow view, and we did a lot of it together. We sort of tidied it up and finished it afterwards and pushed it. So Haiz has it running on his computer. I'm also going to have it running on my computer, and well, potentially we could just use your running version, Haiz, and you could do the screen share, and we can work in that environment if you want, if you're up for that.
We could do that. Yeah, I use a gigantic monitor, so I need to change my window sizes here, or it'll probably look really bad.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
All right.
Robert, do you know whether multiple people can share their screens at the same time, or is that a no?
I'm thinking not. I think when somebody shares, it takes over the view. Like, yeah.
Okay. Okay. So Haiz is,
I think last time it was neat that we were through Zoom able to authorize others to take over control. Correct?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that is pretty sweet. So.
Okay. All right. I think hopefully this will look all right. I'll share my screen. So I can only have the choice of sharing a whole desktop or just a window. So I won't be able to share, like, I don't think this is, I think we might want to use somebody else's, because well, we'll see. I'm going to share my whole desktop and we'll see how this works.
Mm-hmm.
Does that look remotely decent?
Yeah.
It does? Well, okay. All right, then that'll work. I'm going to go ahead and T. There we go. Let me pull up. Wrong project.
Cool. So I think probably the highest leverage place to actually focus is on the Holochain side of things, the backend side of things, and setting up an entry type that relates to the @mentions. So rather than, so focus on pulling up the clutter backend code.
Haiz, it
Yeah.
does look like to me that I'm not seeing all of your screen, if that's what you were worried about. Are you able
Yeah,
to see an entire...
I'm on a 34-inch monitor, and so it's just
Like, right, I have a question that could maybe confirm. Are you able to see like an entire, say, browser window and an entire like coding?
Yeah, I've got 3 windows stretched all the way across my screen.
I see all of them. I see all of them, so it's actually quite good.
Oh, well, I don't, and I'm doing a recording, so hold on, let me see if I can... Okay, I clicked fit to window, and it should be better now, so I think you're good to go.
Okay, as long as you think this is gonna make a decent video.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So yeah, sorry. So I've got everything open here. I've got
yeah, so we want to start probably in the DNA file.
Okay.
Because that's sort of the entry point to defining a new entry.
All right, because these are our actions essentially, right?
Yeah, there are entries, which are kind of like our different types of data that we store, and then our functions, which are
okay. Right.
the methods that we can call. So the upper half is the entries,
Right.
and it's effectively a new entry, which is a JSON object that we're defining. And the one directly above this one is a great reference because they already implemented in the initial pushes that they were doing this idea of anchors, which are the like hashes, like hashtags, I think. And so hashtags work quite similarly to @mentions in that they're a piece of metadata which appears in a meow that we kind of extract at the time of creation,
Right.
or as a related but separate entry. Yeah, so I think mention's a good name for it, and it's going to be JSON because there's going to be multiple properties. Yeah, and we can reference the schema file. So there's sort of an artifact in there from the HC scaffold. I think the schema. Pull that out of there because it's just empty as a property.
So we just delete it.
Yeah. Yeah. So the data format's JSON. The schema file you've got defined by the same name as the name of the entry type. And then sharing is public, same as the other ones. And so now we have to create that mention.json file in the clutter subdirectory. And you might want to copy anchor.json to
Okay, good call.
To create it. Got some confusing nesting of the word type in this file. Mention schema type object.
Oh yeah, this is a little odd.
Good. So now this is interesting, and maybe I'll be proved wrong on how we should actually do this, and maybe an @mention is actually possible within anchors, but I guess I'm just going to assume that's not the case right now. We're going to implement it separately. So they were using for anchors that there was a type and a value. For this, let's think about what do we need to store for an @mention, and it might be useful to take a quick look at post.json, which is the thing that actually gets created. Will you look at that for a second?
Yeah.
Message, yeah.
So once again, this is, I think, is nested inside of this properties, right?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. Indentation helps. Yeah, so this one has the timestamp on it, so we don't necessarily need to store the stamp in the mention, because realistically, when we're grabbing all that data, we should grab the post and as well as the mention. So I'm thinking, so message on a post is going to contain the whole string.
Mm-hmm.
The mention is just like the extracted version. So we would need to store let's say that there were multiple mentions in a post. So we would need to store one for each person, and people are identified by a handle and a hash. But realistically, we should store the underlying data as that person's hash, not as their handle, because they can change their handle.
Right.
Right.
So are these properties essentially arbitrary?
Yeah.
Okay.
So let's say that we called the property that we want on there person hash. Yeah, in place of type. And that would be it.
Is snake case, is this good? What's the, well, I don't know what the...
I think we're tending towards camel case with that.
Okay.
I might be lying, but that's just my personal. I'm not sure. And then value, I think, can just come off. And under required, all that would be required would be person hash.
Does it still need to be an array? I don't know.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. All right, okay. So we're looking good?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's just a string, so that's good. And so having defined the entry type, the next thing we'd be looking at probably is the code where a post gets created, because it's when a post gets created that we would kind of be checking the text and creating separate entries for actually, one more thing before that. In this DNA file,
yes,
we have a couple, scroll up a little bit, and we have a couple things that are of the links type, the data format links.
Right.
And I'm just wondering if there's one called anchor links. Those are using post. There's post links, but I think that's between a person and a post. So we want to create one, I believe it's going to go between a post and and its at mentions, but maybe we'll have to come back to that once we look at the code and see how anchors work.
Gotcha.
So that's clutter.js.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'll be the one sort of slowing this down with sort of noobish questions, but what's the difference between like the DNA JSON file and all these JSON files that are in the like clutter area, and why do we need sort of one for each, and how do we decide sort of when to break it out into a clutter JSON file?
Yeah. I think they did that because those schema definitions, you could technically include them inline, but they're pretty bulky. So probably it would be a detriment to the readability of the DNA file. So, so I'm thinking that's why they did it. And this thing defines a schema for the data according to this thing called json-schema.org. It's like a third-party reference that actually says, here's how you can define a schema for a piece of JSON. So in the main file, If it's a more complex data structure for an entry than just a string, that's when we use we create a schema file for it. I think it's possible that you can do one of two things. You can either define the schema inline with the schema property and nest that JSON, or it's possible that you may also just be able to leave the schema out entirely and allow them to insert data that adheres to whatever schema they want. So yeah, does that make sense of that, Robert?
Yeah, I think so. And the bit where you mentioned that there'd be multiple mentions, very likely, how we've defined this is flexible enough to kind of accommodate multiple mentions, and I'm just curious how that works.
Yeah, they're going to be stored as separate entries, so one for each.
Okay, yeah, that clears it up. Thanks.
Yeah. Cool. So then clutter.js. Haiz. So in here, it's under post. Right. This is interesting because, so first on line 42, it's creating and committing the post object as an entry, right? Then second of all, it's also committing something called post links, which is a relationship between me, the poster, and the post entry. And that it does that so that that's a way for other people to look up all of your posts. We have to find in the code the spot where it parses the post and looks for hashtags. So I'm not sure. Let's do what you do. Scroll through. Haiz, and see.
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, not seeing it so far.
That's the end of the file.
Uh-huh. I think I'm wondering about these validation files at the functions at the end.
Should be one. Okay. There are types of tags.
I think if it did do something extra here, that would be bad practice, because I think these functions, these validate functions, are just supposed to return true or false. But going for a bit further down, anything else? Validate mod. No. Let me do a quick
Open function.
look outside of here to see if I see anything.
Hey, I have a question about how we might improve these recordings. Is there any way that we can all be looking at the same sort of live code as we're editing it during these sessions, instead of sort of having one person have to navigate for all?
There are ways to do that. Yes, we could use Atom's built-in plugin and still capture the video off of one person's screen, but then have multiple cursors, I believe. I think they could. Connor, do you know if that gives you, if teletype gives you multiple cursors?
Yeah, it does. Yeah. Oh, so I just found that actually I thought that it was in the main branch, but there's some work done on hashtags, which is in a different branch. So actually, it's not.
It's in a different Holochain branch.
A different clutter branch. So that can be a place that we can look at.
Okay. So I'm right now. This is not, this is just the clutter directory that was installed by running the init from the example.
Right.
So then, is there actually a way to work off of the clutter repo, or is it always this case where you're installing the latest and then PRing to the repo or something? What's the workflow?
Well, I wonder if this directory in your computer is actually a Git directory. Like if you
It's not.
Oh, it's not. Okay, it just brought the code down. So yeah, I mean, there's a way to just do it. That's to bring the code down to your computer. That's not just using that other command. So that's kind of a way to get the code.
Uh-huh.
But if we switch to my screen for a minute, then we can.
Yeah, let's do that.
We can take a look at some of the other code and so I think you have to.
Oh, do I have to relink it here?
Okay, and then.
Do you run Atom as well, Connor? Because I just installed it. It'd be neat to give it a try with this teletype thing Haiz had mentioned.
Yeah, it's really cool. So what I found is there's a branch called one-implement hashtag, and so this is what I was expecting to see, and I forgot that it's not there yet. But this post method is a lot more sophisticated because it's starting to implement the hashtags. So in terms of conceptually, there's basically two steps. One is like parse the text, and one would be parse the text and find, probably using a regex, and find something which is an @mention. And then the second would be to take each of those @mentions and commit them as entries. So here I think they're referencing another zone instead of just doing it within here. So I guess we'll go and look at that. Anchor hashtag, detect hashtags, and it's called with a message.
Connor, can you paste your URL into the chat for that?
Sure. Anchor hashtag. So same idea. They've defined a regex which looks for a hashtag, and the method takes just a string. It looks for matches of the regex in the string, and then sets this variable equal to this. And if it exists, it returns that. Then we also have this create hashtag. In our case, it would be commit mention. There's a couple different types of links that they're working on creating. So I think like overall, what we're going to be able to do today is basically just write a simple function. We're not going to sort of like implement the whole thing. We're just going to take the opportunity to learn a little bit more about Holochain and kind of.
Yeah, unfortunately, just a time check. I only have like 10 more minutes.
Okay. So. I'm going to grab a few pieces of code from here and just pull them into another file. We'll just focus on the logic, and Haiz, this is where you can maybe sort of help me, and we can pair on this and think it out. This is very muddy code, so we'll try and clean it up and just create something really simple that we're going to be able to use and have it work. Do you know about regex, Haiz?
Yep. So it seems like this is, I mean, are we doing essentially the exact same thing, just looking for an @ symbol?
Yeah, pretty much.
So then really we could probably refactor this a little bit so that they could both refer to, they could both call a function that just accepts two strings. One is the character to detect and two is the string or something. Or maybe something like that.
Yeah, so we're gonna make this method detect mentions, and it's the same thing. It's gonna accept the post string. So we could just say, let's.
Are you on your? We're still seeing your browser. If you're back in Atom.
Okay, yeah. Have to switch that. We share the desktop. My bad. Now you see the Atom editor?
Yes.
Okay, great. So post string is a string, something along the lines of hey at Bob, how are things, right? And in here, I mean, I'm a little bit rusty on regex, so I'm wondering like how just how well defined this one is.
Yeah.
It could be a good idea for us to step out into like a regex editor. There's some good tools like that.
Yeah.
So if we took our string, let's just do that for a second and kind of
One other thing to note, Connor, when you go back to Atom, could you turn on the like file tree view so we see that context?
We don't have, I'm just kind of, since we're just going to work like in this session on a sort of single function and it's the logic contained within it, I'm just going to leave that file and have it sort of be a single thing. Okay, so let's see what we did have here. So
I think it's going to work.
Yeah. So our test string was if Nice.
Yep.
Assert position with /b. Assert position where /b does not match. At matches the character at, literally. Case sensitive. That's fine. W matches any word character equal to A to Z. A to Z 0 to 9 underscore. W plus matches any word character. Plus matches between 1 and unlimited times. And the /b assert position at word boundary. So I guess that's suggesting this this space for the next thing. I like that. Now, I don't know exactly why toString is instantiated within this string caller. Maybe it coerces it into a string format, but let's just assume that we accept the genuine string as an input. And then we look for matches in the regex. So I think it's worthwhile to test what that actually gives us. You have 5 minutes, Haiz? Is that about right?
Yeah. 5 minutes tops.
So popping into a browser, opening the developer tools, pasting in the function, and then calling detectMentions with @Bob. How are you?
Cool.
What if we give it to @Melissa? An array of Bob and Melissa. That's perfect. All right. So let's just return matches for the sake of this function. So I think that this one is a little bit simpler than hashtags, because I think what they were trying to do is create, like, in that other code, they were creating like a new record, a new entry for a unique hashtag, whereas we're just referring to people, so we don't need to create that new thing. But we do want to create a relationship between, which is like a link, which would be a relationship between a mention and a post. And I guess, Haiz, maybe Robert and I, we may stay on till
Great.
5 o'clock or so. We'll kind of like complete the thought.
Cool.
Call it a session, share it out.
And I'd be happy to do this again very soon.
Yeah, cool.
All right. Well, I think that's a good moment for me to jump.
All right, right on.
All right. Well, good luck, guys. And we'll talk to you soon. I'll be looking forward to it.
Awesome.
Awesome. There
Bye.
it is. Another thing about this function, Connor, we also want to verify that they haven't done a typo, right? With that @mention, that the user actually exists.
Yeah, that could be a thing for sure. Validate that user being @mention exists. That can happen in the validate state. So we're changing this hashtag idea to create mention. And Robert, so why don't you just unmute and we can sort of talk about it a little bit more, and you can join the session, and we'll kind of just play with it a little bit more. So what are your thoughts and questions and things with where we're at?
Okay, so when we create a mention, it's going to be created as sort of both something that gets committed to an agent's chain, and then also we commit a link. Is that true, or?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this create mention function will have to do both?
Yes. Yeah, it's gonna commit the mention, and it's gonna commit a link between the mention and its host of origin.
Cool. So the first parameter in this new function shouldn't be a hashtag, right? It should be, is that the, that's the array of mentions?
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
And yeah, so it's kind of like switching this over from the hashtag stuff to this code to mention. And
will we have to loop through them, I guess?
Yeah, we'll loop through them at a higher level of code than this particular function.
Yes. Okay. So we get a single mention each time.
Yeah, a single mention for one of these. So, and I'm thinking that we're just going to take the post hash because that's all that we're going to need to create the link, to it. So, oh. So we're going to need a new type of links entry called mention post links.